Hello and welcome. This is everything you need to know for Week 11 fantasy football. We'll highlight everything we saw in Week 10 and what you need to know going forward. First story, Evan, comes from Monday night's game with these Buffalo Bills. My word. I mean, a comedy of errors. Even before that final Broncos drive, even before the whole thing with the final field goal, Josh Allen had thrown 2 interceptions. He had lost a fumble. James Cook had lost a fumble. This team ends up falling to 5-5. The scapegoat turns out to be Ken Dorsey, offensive coordinator. I didn't think that fumbles, mental mistakes, problems with the roster were necessarily Ken Dorsey's fault, but I also understand sometimes you just have to make a change. They will go with Joe Brady as their offensive coordinator. Evan, what did you think of the decision by the Bills here to rid themselves of Ken Dorsey?
Well, at the end of the game, if they have 11 men on the field and the kick is no good, then Ken Dorsey is probably still the Bills' offensive coordinator today. And if Gabe Davis doesn't let that one go right through his hands early in the game and, horrible penalties, fumble luck. Bill Barnwell had a good stat. So, fumble recoveries are typically about 50%, could go either way. They're a coin flip. The Bills have recovered only 30% of fumbles on the season. So luck definitely plays a big factor. And Ken Dorsey wound up being what I would consider to be the fall guy here. I mean, The Bills defense is terrible. That's been largely due to injuries. And that mistake at the end of the game was probably on the special teams coach.
Yep.
But Ken Dorsey ends up being the guy to go because Sean McDermott isn't going to fire himself. And, there have been complaints about the Bills' offense all season. They're also number 3 in the NFL in EPA offensively. I mean, they have moved the ball consistently all year.
Yep, and it's been the turnovers for sure. I also think the roster isn't necessarily what people think that it is, especially now on defense where they lost Tre'Davious White and Matt Milano and a ton of other guys. Team has a lot of problems. From a fantasy perspective, Evan, do you think this changes anything? Now, Ken Dorsey had been there since Dable left for the Giants. Replacing him is Joe Brady. Joe Brady is this kid prodigy, 34 years old now, was LSU's pass game coordinator in 2019. That's how he got kind of a name. They were going absolutely nuts back then in 2019 in the pass game with LSU. He propels that into the Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator job, got fired from that job. I'm not sure he really deserved to be fired there either, but how do you think this changes fantasy outlook on anybody on the Bills, if at all?
Yeah, speaking of fall guys, Joe Brady was the fall guy for Matt Rule in Carolina. So he's been there before. I love that LSU offense. They played so fast with Joe Burrow. They also had an insane amount of talent. I just don't know how much Joe Brady is capable of changing on the fly during, the NFL season. Now they're on a short week. I don't know how much he's going to be able to change. I think that they're probably going to keep doing what they've been doing.
It's not even a bye week or anything. I mean, they play the Jets at home on Sunday. And so I don't think, we're not going to project any real significant changes from usage. We'd be mostly guessing unless we can get some reports and stuff like that.
I think that there is one change that they could make, and I've been kind of hinting at that this might be coming for the last couple of weeks in matchups, and that's that they could run Josh Allen more.
Yeah,
that is something that I think that they could implement. But at the same time, they ran the ball really efficiently yesterday against Denver. I mean, Latavius Murray looked really good. James Cook averaged, 9 yards per carry. A lot of that came on a 42-yard run, but they were really efficient as a rushing team. So I'm not sure that they'll even see that as being a problem.
One other thing from the game last night, I mean, James Cook has a bad fumble on his first touch or whatever it was. It was his first career fumble, ever. They just immediately bench him, bring him back in, and he plays well. I don't know. I don't know about this whole punishment for fumbling thing when the guy's not a fumbler. I think it hurt the team, but like Evan said, Latavius certainly played well enough to continue to earn carries. So yeah, let's go to second biggest story from Week 10 that we saw, and that comes out of Atlanta. Falcons lose their 3rd straight game, this time in Arizona in Kyler Murray's return. 2 interesting things on the Falcons here for me. First, Arthur Smith did indeed capitulate under all the pressure to give Bijan Robinson more work. In this game, Bijan, 53 of 71 snaps. That's 75%. 22 carries, 65% of the running back carries, 23 routes on 27 quarterback dropbacks. He also got a carry from inside the 5-yard line, which he converted for a touchdown. You are not going to find much better usage around the league right now. Yeah, there's some outlier guys like Josh Jacobs and McCaffrey and ETN and guys like this. But for most of the guys, this is really, really strong usage. The fantasy playoff schedule for the Falcons is Panthers, Colts, Bears. That might be the best possible schedule for this Falcons offense there in the fantasy playoffs. So I thought that was important. The second important thing from the Falcons was Taylor Heineke gets hurt. Desmond Ridder comes in. Now they have a bit of a quarterback controversy. So, Evan, what did you think about Bijan in the feature back role? Anything else on the Falcons?
I mean, it's what we've been hoping for, and at the same time, I'm still left wanting a little bit more because Bijan was targeted, once or twice during the game.
Yep.
The Falcons now go on a bye. And so Taylor Heineke will theoretically, pass protocol. I'm sorry, he had a hamstring injury, but he should be probably. It didn't seem like that serious. It does seem to me that Arthur Smith favors Desmond Ridder. The way that he talks about Desmond Ridder tends to be more positively than the way that he talks about Taylor Heineke. And so I think that if, assuming that they're both healthy, I think that Arthur Smith actually is somewhat likely to go back to Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, he kicked and screamed just to moving to Taylor Heineke, so I do think he feels a little bit better about Desmond Ridder. But yeah, we'll see as they come out of their bye who they're going to go to. Third biggest story was the Saints stuff. So Saints get behind 21-6 at halftime. Olave was basically a zero. Ton more Alvin Kamara checkdowns. Then Derek Carr gets hit from 2 angles in the pocket, kind of hits his head, his shoulder. Pretty hard hit. Jameis Winston comes in and does what Jameis Winston does, which is be very aggressive, not care if he commits an interception, not really care about anything except giving his playmakers down the field chances. And so what you got from that was big Olave game, a crazy throw to A.T. Perry. And so I'm hopeful that when they come out of the bye, for the sake of Chris Olave, for the sake of Rashid Shaheed, for the sake of these guys who go downfield, I'm hopeful that it will be Jameis Winston when we next see the Saints. However, Dennis Allen came out and said that Derek Carr is our starting quarterback, assuming he's healthy. We will see there. Evan, what do you think about the Carr versus Jameis controversy now? And then we also need to talk about the Michael Thomas injury as well.
I'm hoping that we get some Jameis Winston starts, but it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. First of all, the Saints gave a monster contract to Derek Carr. Jameis Winston at this point is playing for peanuts. Jameis Winston adds a lot more excitement and explosive ability to the Saints offense, but he turns the ball over, so, and Derek Carr doesn't turn the ball over that much. He's, willing to play much more conservatively. Michael Thomas looks like he's going to be out for a long time.
Yeah.
It was called a fairly significant injury. I don't think he's going to be back in the game after the bye, probably a few weeks after that. We'll see. Maybe he'll go on IR. We'll see about that. A.T. Perry's kind of interesting. He wound up leading the Saints in week 10 snaps. 6th-round rookie out of Wake Forest, 6'4", 198, ran 4.47. He had over 1,000 yards in each of his final 2 seasons at Wake Forest, where he played with Sam Hartman, who's now the starting quarterback at Notre Dame. But, I think that he might end up – well, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. We all want to see more Rashid Shaheed too. Mm-hmm. And Rashid Shaheed, his target numbers went up after Michael Thomas left. Michael Thomas only played 2 snaps in the game. And but A.T. Perry really filled in for Michael Thomas. So I don't know. Well, I guess we'll just have to see on that.
I talked about this with Sam a bunch yesterday on the waiver show. Hopefully you guys caught that. I don't think you can really ask Rashid Shaheed to do what Michael Thomas, run the kind of routes that Michael Thomas ran. That's not really his game. What you can expect is Rashid Shaheed to be more featured in game plans, to be more, have a bigger target share, because A.T. Perry is not going to earn targets or game plan at the same rate that Michael Thomas would have. Now, I also think that for people in extremely deep leagues, you could add A.T. Perry here. Agree with Evan. Doesn't sound like Michael Thomas is out for the year, but if he's out 3, 4, 5, maybe more weeks, that's a lot. I mean, that's basically the rest of the fantasy football season. So, yeah, if you're in a deep league, I think A.T. Perry is interesting, but Shaheed should certainly be owned across the board. The only guy I think that is worse if Jameis starts, maybe not worse, but not great if Jameis starts, not as good, would be Alvin Kamara, because Alvin Kamara needs the checkdowns, and Derek Carr gives Alvin Kamara so many checkdowns. But yeah, overall, I still think that they'd be better off for fantasy, at least, with Jameis. Other injury here was Marshawn Lattimore sustained an ankle injury. Sounds like it's pretty significant. Also, Marshawn Lattimore has been having an excellent season playing cornerback for the Saints.
Last note is that Taysom Hill, it has been being used a lot more in neutral and positive game scripts than in comeback mode. And this was a game where the Vikings jumped out to a pretty big lead, and so Taysom Hill finished with 3 touches. That's not always something that is easy to predict, but we can look at spreads and that sort of thing to target when to use Taysom Hill in season long and in DFS.
People always complain that we're too low on Taysom Hill's projection when he's like on these touchdown binges, and then he goes 8 straight weeks without a touchdown, and people just don't say anything about Taysom Hill. It's really, really hard to project these Taysom Hill touchdowns. A lot more, these guys who only do well if they score a touchdown, it's just always going to be really, really thin. Remains an incredible best ball pick every year because he plays tight end and he has these huge touchdown spikes. But yeah. Vikings, 4th biggest story of the week. So beat the Saints, as I just mentioned, in Josh Dobbs' first start. Josh Dobbs was very, very good. 844-1 rushing, 268 passing yards. This team has now won 5 in a row, all without Justin Jefferson, and their last 2 without Kirk Cousins. You're starting to hear a lot of Kevin O'Connell Coach of the Year rumors. He's down to 10-1, I saw, but down to like 4-1 and 5-1 in some spots also. I definitely think he has a chance if Dan Campbell and the Lions fall off. The Vikings do play the Lions twice in the final 3 weeks of the season, which could matter there. But the big fantasy story, Evan, was Alexander Mattison sharing time with Ty Chandler, and then Alexander Mattison sustaining a concussion. So even before Alexander Mattison got banged up, this team already decided that Ty Chandler was going to get around 50% of the running back touches. At least that's what it looked like. What do you think about Ty Chandler going forward? Evan, anything else on the Vikings?
Yeah, just starting with Ty Chandler. We talked about him a lot during best ball draft season as, potentially being like a big-time sleeper. I liked Alexander Mattison, but I also knew that Alexander Mattison could fail. And Ty Chandler has, flashed in preseason. And he was really productive in college, and he had like this insane, like 1.45, 10-yard split. I mean, he's really explosive, but they just showed so little faith in him in the first half of the season, went out, traded for Cam Akers. He tears Achilles. Finally, Ty Chandler gets an opportunity here. And I don't think that Alexander Mattison is going to be ready against Denver. I think that that's unlikely. And Denver just got gassed, by the run on a short week, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big time opportunity coming up for Ty Chandler. And if he excels in this opportunity, and we're going to have to talk about Myles Gaskin and that kind of thing too. But if he excels in this opportunity, like, he's got a chance to be a big time fantasy factor in the second half of the season in a really productive offense where the trajectory continues to point upward. I want to reiterate how quarterback friendly Kevin O'Connell's offense is, and it's about to get, and I know Jay Glazer reported that Justin Jefferson probably not back week 11, hopefully after that, but it's about to get even friendlier with one of the best receivers in the league coming back, and Jordan Addison has shown so much, and Hawkinson. Josh Dobbs was just unbelievable in this game, and the Saints, they should be kicking themselves. They played a very soft zone. They really, They didn't think that Josh Dobbs could beat him like the way that he did. But Josh Dobbs also deserves credit because the Saints wound up generating a good amount of pressure, and Josh Dobbs killed on his under pressure throws.
Amazing what Josh Dobbs is doing. And you know what's crazy, man? Like, if the Jets had Josh Dobbs, they might be one of the better teams in the AFC. But they let the Vikings get Josh Dobbs for a 6th-round pick. And like I said, now the Vikings have won 5 in a row. The only other thing I'd say on the Madison stuff is, like, I thought Madison was a pretty good 5th or 6th round fantasy pick this year. Turned out to be wrong. He has not played well enough to sustain the role. Like, so Ty Chandler coming in and getting a chance, does not surprise me at all. If he could, like Evan said, he could hang on to it here going forward. Last thing I'll say is TJ Hawkinson, man. I mean, came into the game banged up. There was an Ed Werder report that he would be like limited to certain types of packages. Goes off in the first half and then finishes with 11 catches, 134 yards, and a touchdown. Hawkinson is having an amazing year, and Dobbs' tight end target rate is just continues to rise. Fifth biggest story of the week was Dallas. So everybody knows, or at least people paying attention knows, that the Cowboys lately have been going far more pass heavy. However, as 17-point home favorites against the Giants, there was at least some thought that they would go more balanced here, that they would go run heavy, they would get Tony Pollard going. It's not what happened. They again go extremely pass heavy. Dak goes for 404 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb, 150 receiving yards.
And didn't even play in the fourth quarter.
And at this point, I kind of like what they're doing. Listen, man, if you're just going to go shotgun delay and give Tony Pollard the ball into the back of his offensive lineman, just throw it every play. And that's what they're doing. Because this Tony Pollard, draw shotgun nonsense, it's just not going to work. So throw the ball in every play. Dak is very good. CeeDee's very good. Brandon Cooks had a huge game. I think Ferguson's good. They have Gallup. I kind of like it. What do you think about what Dallas is doing right now? Any other thoughts for them coming out of their obvious blowout of the Giants?
And again, it also kind of suits Mike McCarthy's history. He would get kind of ripped at times, or at least when the Packers would lose in Green Bay, for being too pass heavy. So he likes to throw the football. He believes in that. And you're right. That's exactly what they should be doing. CeeDee Lamb over his last 3 games, 34 catches, 500 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, 17 receptions of 15-plus yards. Offensive Player of the Year. He's in the mix, all right? Dak MVP. I mean, now we're cooking, right?
Dak MVP is down to like 30-1. I actually have CD from before the year for Offensive Player of the Year. I think like
nice.
50-1 or something, but I still think it's going to be really hard to catch CMC or Tyreek. For that.
They also have the Carolina and the Commanders coming up next, so they can absolutely stay hot.
Tony Pollard now has 9 carries from inside the 5-yard line. He got another carry from the 1-yard line in this game. He's only scored 2 touchdowns on those, and they were both in week 1. I mean, it's crazy how inefficient and unlucky he's been around the goal line. But like I've talked about, and we've talked about, there are many problems beyond that. The bad news, Evan, is I'm not sure you're aware, but Dallas plays Carolina on Sunday, and Tony Pollard is again very cheap on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So we will be having another Tony Pollard debate / discussion on Friday night. All right. That's it for the top 5 stories. Let's move into the NFC now, where we'll go alphabetical through the rest of the NFC teams here. Start with a fun one. The Arizona Cardinals are fun again, Evan. Kyler Murray back from his ACL tear. This was 11 months ago he tore the ACL. Go to my Twitter if you haven't seen the highlight of him making this crazy, like loop-de-loop 30. He runs some insane amount of yards, makes cuts, looks so fast. 11 months removed from ACL. It was an insane run. They also called 4 designed runs for him. He finished 633-1 rushing. I don't think the Cardinals could have asked for a better Kyler Murray return, other than they probably wish they lost the game. But nevertheless, good win for the Cardinals over the Falcons here. Evan, what do you think of Kyler Murray's return? On
the run that you mentioned that ultimately only went for 13 yards, Kyler Murray, according to Next Gen Stats, ran for 74 yards and eclipsed 20 miles per hour on his run. So, and I kind of heard that they were just so pleased with the way that his recovery was going. He attacked his rehab, and he looks like almost 100%. I would say he's awfully close if he isn't. Also, they are loving Trey McBride.
Oh yeah.
Internally, they think that this is like our he won the Mackey, but I mean this is this is their Kittle, this is their Kelsey, and he's absolutely shredding. I keep getting these questions. Hey, I have Mark Andrews, but I also have Trey McBride. Should I trade Mark Andrews for blah blah blah? I think if you have Trey McBride right now, you can be willing to trade Mark Andrews. Sure. I feel that way, and I think that there is absolutely a bond, or at least it showed on Sunday between him and between those two, Kyler Murray and Trey McBride. And we saw last year that Kyler Murray was so willing to target Zach Ertz, and Trey McBride is so much more explosive.
Man, so exciting for the best ball bags on the Trey McBride stuff, and hopefully people had also added him in your season-long leagues. It's hard. We talked about this on the waiver show. It's hard to carry 2 tight ends on your team in a lot of these shallower leagues. So what Evan is talking about, giving up Mark Andrews for something, I think is something to consider for sure.
Also, James Conner came back and dominated the rushing share.
Yep.
He was not used heavily in the passing game, but I mean, he's ready to go. He has a chance to be an high end every week RB2 the rest of the way, I think.
Agreed. Yeah, James Conner first game back, 41 of 63 snaps, also 16 of 19 running back carries. I think Alec Evan alluded to that pass catching stuff is a bit fluky. He's usually good to project for, at least 2 or 3 catches per game. Panthers. So this was the Thursday game. Panthers played the Bears in Chicago. And man, it was scary. If you didn't know, you couldn't really tell the difference between Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick of the Panthers, and Tyson Bagent, an undrafted free agent who played at Shepherd College last year. Panthers fall to 1-8. I mean, this is scary time, and I don't want to panic too early, but there's a lot of people in Carolina panicking, saying we blew it with Bryce Young getting outplayed, or at least evenly played, by Tyson Bagent in an island game. Did not help. Evan, what do you think of Panthers last Thursday night?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty ugly. I mean, I don't know, just expanding on your notes, Chuba Hubbard stayed ahead of Miles Sanders. They've got Dallas coming up.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be I'm giving Bryce Young a break, and I've been hard on him at times too, but there's just nothing around him. I mean, that the perimeter receivers don't win. He's locked into Adam Thielen. The Panthers, reportedly, they tried to acquire Devontae Adams and T. Higgins before the trade deadline, got neither of them, but that shows that internally they know that there's a big problem with what they've put around Bryce Young. I mean, at this point, I just wrote up Cowboys, Panthers. You got Thielen in the slot, and you got Jonathan Mingo and Terrace Marshall and DJ Shark and Amir Smith-Marset, and you're playing Michael Strahan, not the old Giants pass rusher. And then they use 3 tight ends, and now they're getting back Ian Thomas from IR. So it's just a bunch of garbage out there, So Bryce Young, I think, is really almost impossible to evaluate. At the same time, they used the number 1 overall pick on a 5'11", 190-pound quarterback. I don't think that's ever worked, especially when that quarterback is not a super dynamic runner like Kyler Murray.
And just to give the counter to what you said, it's not like the Texans have a great team. I mean, I like Tank Dell. I like their receivers, but they have better things around them than the Panthers do, but it's not great. I think the coaching on the Texans has been way better than the coaching on the Panthers. Also, shout out PFF's Bobby Slowick. Only other note that I had, last 3 games, Miles Sanders has been outtouched by Chuba Hubbard 48-15. Has to be one of the worst contracts we've seen for a running back. I mean, and everybody knew it at the time. I mean, it's not hindsight. That Miles Sanders contract, egregious. And I bet they break the bank for T. Higgins when he becomes a free agent. They're going to go nuts. And I actually like that, but they're going to have to pay him an insane amount. All right. Bears, just mentioned, they fall behind early on that Thursday night into the Panthers on a kick return touchdown, come back and beat the Panthers, give up no offensive touchdowns. Deontay Foreman was the feature back, but Khalil Herbert surprisingly ended up not playing in this game. Also think Justin Fields could be back here in week 11 too. We'll see on that. Evan, any Bears thoughts coming out of their win against the Panthers last Thursday?
Yeah, I would expect Khalil, because he was a full practice participant leading up to that game, now gets the extra, 10 days. I would expect Khalil Herbert to be back. I'm not sure what to expect in terms of his role, but Deontay Foreman has been very good when they feed him carries. And I think that Khalil Herbert is still a player that coaches see as a change of pace back. And I think that Roschon Johnson will probably stay involved at least as like a pass protector and, occasional long down and distance guy. So I don't know. The one thing I'll say is that the Bears running game has been really good since the start of the season. So I think if they continue to ride with D'Onta Foreman, we can get useful weeks out of him from a fantasy standpoint. Over his last 5 games, D'Onta Foreman averaging over 4 yards per carry and has scored 4 touchdowns. DJ Moore, I know he's been up and down. It's like he's always going to be up and down, but he does have 40-plus yards in 9 straight games. Those are the notes that I had. I expect Justin Fields to be back this week.
Yeah, I'll say 2 things. First, I understand that D'Onta Foreman has played great. I don't think you can just like bench Khalil Herbert if you're the Bears. So I would expect some kind of committee there, which isn't going to be great for either one, especially when Justin Fields comes back, because Justin Fields coming back is just a nightmare for running backs. They get less rushing touchdowns and they get fewer receptions. So yeah, the Justin Fields stuff I think is not great for the running backs here. If you could sell D'Onta Foreman, I'd probably be doing so now. It'd be hard to sell him though.
Totally fair. And I think that if Fields is cleared and ready to go, he's an immediate fantasy starter against the Lions in a potential high scoring game.
Lions go into Los Angeles and beat the Chargers in a wild one. The big fantasy story everyone was watching in this game was how would the backfield look with Dave Montgomery back and Jahmyr Gibbs playing so well. Snaps were 38 for Gibbs, 25 for Demont. Routes were Gibbs 21, Demont 10. Opportunities, Gibbs 19, Demont 12. Now, I do want to be clear that Demont had a really long touchdown run, and it seemed like they were kind of going drive by drive. So if Demont's drive there had been longer, maybe it would have looked more like the 50-50 that we were expecting. Other important note is that Jahmyr Gibbs got 3 carries from inside the 5-yard line. In other words, it was his drive. They got inside the 5-yard line. They didn't take Jahmyr Gibbs out to bring in Dave Montgomery to score the touchdown. They left him in. And so Jahmyr Gibbs gets 2 short rushing touchdowns in this game. Dave Montgomery gets the long one. So yeah, I think that's, they're going to use both these guys and both of them are going to be startable in fantasy. Evan, what'd you see from Lions' good win out there in a high-scoring game against the Chargers?
Yeah, seeing David Montgomery break a long run like that, like he never does that.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit fluky, but he looked great on that run. I mean, he's back to 100%, no question. Amon-Ra St. Brown is just so freaking good. And because he gets so many routes in the middle of the field, like he just destroyed the Chargers safeties. Amon-Ra St. Brown is like legit consistent, high floor, high upside every single week. And that is really difficult to find at the wide receiver position. My last note was that Jameson Williams almost scored a big-time touchdown in the first quarter, but had it called back on an illegal low block.
Yep.
But, he's getting some playing time, and that's good to see. I mean, I still think that they have untapped upside as an offense, especially if they can really get Jameson Williams going.
Yeah. DPJ did not play in this game because they didn't think he was ready, but still watching that to see if DPJ cuts in there to Jameson at all. But yeah, Jameson's box score looked bad. That penalty was unfortunate for him.
Last note, the Lions didn't have a single 3-and-out in this game. Their offense is humming, and they're good in every area.
Packers. Thought Jordan Love showed some life here, at Pittsburgh. A bunch of long completions, but they still lose the game. And, it's hard to go into Pittsburgh and face that defense and face that defensive line and everything. But, man, I think I'm just fully taking the L on Christian Watson at this point. He has no connection with Jordan Love whatsoever. ESPN even wrote an article about how they tried to go to Christian Watson a couple times in very important parts of the game, and they just haven't been able to get on the same page. It's not even close to them connecting. And the suggestion in the article was maybe they need to look for a different go-to guy than Christian Watson. And that's probably true. It just doesn't seem to be happening between Love and Christian Watson whatsoever. So really disappointing there on him. He's down to a 42% catch rate. I mean, that is unfathomable, 42%. So pretty depressing on Christian Watson. But yeah, Evan, Packers are down bad overall. What do you think of their game out there in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, 42% catch rate, the lowest among all 126 qualifiers. Also, Jordan Love has thrown the most interceptions in the league, 10 this season. 4 of them have been on passes to Christian Watson, and Christian Watson has missed a considerable amount of time. With that said, I'll be very interested to see where we land on the Packers passing game on the Friday show, because they're facing the worst pass defense in the league in Week 11 in the Chargers. Yep.
Oh gosh. Jordan Love is not it, man. That's one thing about quarterback play this year. Like, people keep asking why are you scoring down, why is scoring down. It's not just all the quarterback injuries we've had. It's also guys who are supposed to be like reasonable starters just aren't it, and Jordan Love just tops the list there. Rams. They were on a bye last week. They'll come out of bye to host the Seahawks. To me, this is a huge game for the Rams and huge game for fantasy owners of Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, etc., because the Rams are 3-6. In this game, Matthew Stafford is back. Cooper Kupp is healthy. They need a win to inject life into them and to make them play out the string. If they are playing as hard as they can and have all their guys for the fantasy playoffs, they play Commanders, Saints, and Giants in the fantasy playoffs. So I'm hopeful here, as someone who has Kupp, who has Puka, who has Stafford in best ball stuff, that they can get a win here. I think it's important. Evan, anything for you on the Rams as they come out of their bye?
So the Rams, before their bye, signed Carson Wentz, and I thought that was maybe potentially a sign that they didn't expect Matthew Stafford back, but I think that they do expect Matthew Stafford.
Already been reported Matthew Stafford's going to back. I think they wanted Wentz because Brett Rippon's performance in the game before the bye was so bad. They just could not conceivably go forward with that.
I get it. I get it. And Puka Nacua, and maybe to a lesser extent Cooper Kupp, were both dealing with nagging injuries. I mean, Puka Nacua had gotten to the point where he was limited all the time and listed as questionable. Coming off the bye should help him. And then Kyron Williams. So Sean McVay before the bye said that he didn't expect Kyron Williams back until Week 12.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see how we make it through the week there, though, because Kyron Williams, when he's been healthy this year, he's been an RB1.
Expecting Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman to be the backs this week. Still think Kyron has a pretty good chance to be back for Week 12. Giants. Not much to say of the Giants at this point. I mean, they went down to Dallas as 17, 18-point underdogs, and as expected, they got trounced. Tommy DeVito gets down 28-0 at halftime to the Cowboys. The Saquon usage is awesome. It's just still going to be really hard to trust him given the state of this offense, this offensive line, the quarterback play. I saw some people joking, or at least half joking, they should trade Dable back to the Bills and get something for him at this point. But yeah, Evan, anything for you on the Giants getting trounced at Dallas as expected?
Yeah, and they had lost Evan Neal, their starting right tackle. He has high ankle sprains on both of his legs at this point. And then they lost Andrew Thomas, who had been dealing with a hamstring injury in the first part of the season. He aggravated that hamstring injury. I don't think that Saquon is fully healthy either. It's obviously it's a lost season for this team.
Eagles will come out of their bye, which I actually think the bye was big for Jalen Hurts. I know I noted on here that I could see Jalen Hurts limping. I didn't think he was as explosive as a runner, was still doing the tush push stuff. It was reportedly a bone bruise on his knee. Should be better here. One of the games of the year, though, for the Eagles. They come out of their bye, Monday Night Football, Super Bowl preview, possible Super Bowl preview, Eagles against Chiefs. Really exciting game. We'll obviously talk about that plenty ahead of the showdown slate on Monday. Also, I do think the Eagles are going to get right guard Cam Jurgens back. Already, one of the league's best offensive lines, but getting Jurgens back, I think, means something. Do not expect Goddard back. I have not seen any news on him. It's Tuesday at 2:30 Eastern or so. I'd expect some news real soon on how long Goddard's going to be out. I haven't seen a timetable on him, but yeah, Evan, anything for you on the Eagles as they come out of their bye?
Yeah. Have we even yet received word on whether he's going on IR?
No, that's what I was waiting for.
Okay. Yeah. So that'll be something we'll be looking for this week. Just a reminder that when Dallas Goedert has been out, which I believe he missed 5 games last year, Devontae Smith's target share went up about 7-8%.
Yeah.
So something to file away.
Seahawks get a tight win, a wild win over the Commanders. Kind of knew this game, or at least thought this game could get a little bit wild. I know Evan was on the over in this game, which hit. Geno bounce back was, as obvious as it could be. Predictably gets right here against the Commanders, who can't rush the passer, can't defend the pass. Geno goes off for 369 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. Still turned into a nail biter, though. Evan, what do you think of Seattle's win over the Commanders?
I was happy to bank that over, especially after missing the over on New England, which
New England, Seattle the week before, yeah.
No, yeah.
New England, Washington.
New England, Washington, yeah. No, I mean, I think at this point, the backfield in Seattle, I mean, it's still clearly Kenneth Walker, but his ability to make explosive plays, like they need that in their offense. So he isn't going to go away. I think there have been some people that speculate, Zach Charbonnet has cut into his passing game usage a decent amount, but just that explosive ability that Kenneth Walker has, and you saw it here on his 64-yard receiving touchdown. That's not something that Zach Charbonnet has in his bag. Jackson Smith and Jigba has slowly but surely started to become a fairly regular factor, and in a high quality passing offense. I mean, I think he can be an every week wide receiver 3 the rest of the way.
Yeah, for sure. And like the snap count stuff, like Evan's alluding to with the Walker Charbonnet, it's kind of misleading. Even though Charbonnet is playing about the same amount of snaps, if not more, on a weekly basis now, Kenneth Walker's still getting more touches. And yeah, I mean, making big plays, man, Kenneth Walker is awesome at that. 49ers come out of their bye and trounce the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, statement, trounce the Jaguars. The bet on Purdy is always the same. And it was the same bet going back to preseason, same bet every week. Can he be mega efficient? And my answer is always yes. That's just what he does. When you have CMC, Kittle, Ayuk, Debo, you get them the ball around them, and they are mega efficient. So only 26 attempts here for Purdy in this game, but he turns that into 296 pass yards and 3 touchdowns. Evan, what did you think of 49ers just going ham on the Jaguars in Jacksonville?
Yeah, they got healthy. Debo made a big play in the running game. But, I mean, when the 49ers are healthy, Kittle had a 66-yard touchdown. What an absolute beast. When the 49ers are healthy, they are a high-octane unit. Purdy now has averaged over 11 yards per pass attempt in both of his last 2 games. They were moving the ball even during that period where they lost 3 in a row. They were moving the ball at as good a rate as any other team in the NFL. It's just they made some untimely mistakes, and it cost them some games. In this game, Purdy just destroyed the Jaguars' blitz. The Jaguars tried to get after him with the blitz. And by the way, this week, the 49ers play the Bucs, and they blitz at the 3rd highest rate in the league. So Purdy will have another opportunity to undo a heavy blitz team. But yeah, I mean, the 49ers at full strength, they are an absolute juggernaut.
I don't know if you noticed at the end, they were winning 38-3 or 31-3 or whatever it was. And they tried to get Christian McCaffrey a touchdown, even though he was already out for the game, to try to extend his record to 18 straight games with a touchdown. Similar to the Josh Jacobs, we want to get him 100 yards thing. This stuff matters for sure. It was unfortunate that CMC didn't get in there, but the fact that they tried was, a huge boost to his EV. I mean, he shouldn't have been in the game. If he would have gotten hurt, Kyle Shanahan would have gotten killed, but
true.
I'm in.
On the season, per Jeff Deeney, who covers the 49ers for PFF, Christian McCaffrey leads the NFL in rushing yards after contact, missed tackles forced rushing, first downs rushing and receiving, most runs of 10-plus yards, and most receiving yards by a running back. So,
yeah. I
mean, I think that if we were to redo it today, is Christian McCaffrey the number 1 overall pick?
We've had him number 1 overall in the rest of the season, top 150 for 9 straight weeks. I mean, yeah, we capitulated real fast on that. CMC should have been the number 1 overall pick for sure. Bucks defense actually dominated in the 20-6 win over the Titans. They dominated Will Levis. We'll get to that when we get to the Titans. But besides that, man, Baker's having his best season of his career. And he's doing it with big play balls to Mike Evans. Mike Evans is now 7th among all wide receivers in fantasy points per game this year. I mean, that is impressive from Mike Evans. In these matchups that Baker can win, he's been fine this year. Evan, what'd you think of Bucs win over the Titans?
Yeah, I was just like, Mike Evans, nobody really talks about this yet. Mike Evans belongs in the Hall of Fame. He has a Hall of Fame career.
Definitely.
For sure. He also in this game, and he taketh away sometimes. He had 2 big drops in the game, including one of a wide open touchdown, comes back and is just an absolute beast the rest of the game. It looks like Chase Edmonds is now the Bucs' number 2 running back. Keyshawn Vaughn was, I believe, a healthy scratch.
Yes. For
this one, not that really matters. That's all I got on the Bucs.
Yeah, the backfield stuff is, to me, Rachaad White's role is so good. The running game is just broken going back to last year, and he's not that good. So it's never going to be efficient, right? You're going to get a lot of games like this, though. 20 carries for 51 yards. Wasn't able to score on the ground, didn't get any real opportunities to. But then he gets a 43-yard receiving touchdown. And, you have a lot of outs to Rachaad White having a good fantasy game. He could fall into the end zone. They could get the ball at the 1-yard line. He falls into the end zone. He can catch 8 balls. He can take a pass for a touchdown like he did in this game. So, yeah, it's hard on Rachaad White because he's not efficient and he's not that good. He's still a very viable fantasy asset to have. Last NFC team is the Washington football team. They lose in Seattle. Got wild there late. The craziest thing from this game, if you gave me 100 chances who had 6 catches, 119 yards, and a touchdown, I never would have gotten Brian Robinson. Almost impossible to ever think Brian Robinson could have a 6'1", 119-1 receiving line. If you watch back his catches, which I did because I have no life, but it was kind of fluky. It wasn't like stuff that was schemed for him downfield. It was broken plays where he just kind of got loose. But anyways, great to see from Brian Robinson. Evan, what do you think of Commanders' game out there in Seattle?
I think Sam Howell continues to be pretty impressive, and they've cut down way big time on his sacks taken. I mean, it would have been a miracle if he only took 3 sacks on 47 pass dropbacks earlier in the season. So you like to see that. Mm-hmm. They're going to need to add to that offensive line in the offseason for sure. But this is kind of like a fun team and a fun team to play other offenses against because they're so perfectly aligned to be a shootout team. Logan Thomas continues to have a really big role, 5 catches for 40 in this one. I mean, he's an every week fantasy starter at tight end.
After the game, there's a clip out there. After the game, Logan Thomas and DK Metcalf were talking, and Logan Thomas says, "My son is your biggest fan, DK." And DK looks at him. He's like, "Oh, how old is your son?" And Logan Thomas says 15. And you see DK kind of try to process the math of how old is Logan Thomas? How could he have a 15-year-old son? But shout out to Logan Thomas for being on the team. And then DK Metcalf did a cool thing, took off his jersey, signed it for Logan Thomas's kid. So that was cool.
Yeah, Logan Thomas is 10 years older than DK Metcalf.
Oh, yeah. At least. Only other note I had on this game was they continue to throw to so many guys. 11 different pass catchers were targeted by Sam Howell on his 44 attempts. And so it's really hard for me to ever play Dotson and McLaurin. It's hard for me to see them predictably consolidating a target share. It's happened this year, but it's going to be really hard to predict it. So, yeah. Especially
when they're going to continue to mix in Diami Brown, who had an awesome touchdown late in this game, and Byron Pringle, and John Bates, and
it's Chiefs stuff. It's the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And this is what the Chiefs do too. So blame the enemy. All right. Let's go to the NFC. Next up, the AFC. Ravens. I'm not sure exactly how, but the Ravens blew this game to the Browns despite getting out to a big first quarter lead in what was a pretty big divisional game for them. Lamar Jackson again disappoints in fantasy, even though his team scores 30 plus points. This time, Lamar only completes 13 passes somehow. And, a big issue with the Lamar fantasy stuff is just he doesn't get the tush push. Another Gus Edwards 1-yard rushing touchdown, which would have been a Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown for sure if it was the Eagles. So, yeah, tough on Lamar right now. I'm not panicking on him, but I know some people are. Evan, what do you think of Ravens' loss to the Browns?
Well, I think that one of the bigger stories right now from a fantasy standpoint with the Ravens is what are they going to do with Keaton Mitchell? because he had, I think, 4 snaps and either 1 or 2 touches in the second half of this game, in a game where the Ravens probably should have been running the ball in the second half, and maybe with one of their most explosive backs, definitely their most explosive back. And John Harbaugh came out of the game and expressed legit regret for not getting the ball to Keaton Mitchell in the second half. Blamed it on personnel packages or something like that. But I would expect Keaton Mitchell to get a bigger role on Thursday night against the Bengals. Is Keaton Mitchell going to be able to make Justice Hill irrelevant or the odd man out? I think could be one of the bigger fantasy stories of the second half of the season, because Gus Edwards isn't going away. His role is secure, but he's limited. He's a role player. And so can Keaton Mitchell overcome Justice Hill and make this a 2-man backfield? That's going to be a big deal, I think.
Yeah. And, I don't want to go overboard. Keaton Mitchell looks like Devon Achane, right? You give the guy the ball and he runs for 40 yards every time. Now, I don't know how sustainable that is. We've obviously talked a ton about Keaton Mitchell going back to last week when he was the waiver wire darling. What I do know now, though, is that we had some quotes, like Evan alluded to, from John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh, 4 snaps, 1 touch in the second half for Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell ends up with just 13 snaps in this game. Justice Hill had 14 snaps. Gus Edwards, 28. Harbaugh says, looking back on it, would we have wanted Keaton out there more? Yeah. So I think that he'll play more. He should certainly be playing more than Justice Hill, but I think they're still going to continue to use 3 guys, and you need Lamar running the ball for this team to hit its potential also. Evan, what do you say to the people who are panicking on Lamar Jackson right now? It's been a struggle in fantasy. Even though the Ravens have been scoring 30-plus points every week, it's still been a struggle lately for Lamar Jackson in fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, this is, a classic really low touchdown rate thing that you just bet on mean regression or positive regression toward the mean. I think that Lamar Jackson is just an easy buy low.
Bengals lose a home game to the Texans, and all the story around this game coming in was T. Higgins is out, Jamar Chase is hurt, but really it was Bengals defense, I thought, that didn't show up. Or maybe I should not give enough credit to Stroud, who we'll get to in a second here, but Bengals defense got shredded by Stroud. I thought Jamar Chase looked fine. Tyler Boyd had a really bad drop for a touchdown. Trenton Irwin ran 38 routes on 47 dropbacks. He had a touchdown as well here. Evan, what do you think of Bengals loss at home to the Texans here?
Well, I think that, and now they're on a short week, I think that your note that you made Sunday morning turned out to be very prescient, that if the Bengals, wanted Jamar Chase to be at 100%, or that they had fear that he wouldn't be 100%, they wouldn't, for this huge divisional game coming up on Thursday night on the short week, then they would have held him out against the Texans. But no, they felt really good about where he was, and he went out there and he made a monster run after catch touchdown, and he ran 43 routes. And I mean, I think he played 84% of the snaps or something like that. So he was right at 84%. So I mean, I would feel really good about him going up against the Ravens, and I thought that was a really good call by you on Sunday morning.
Yes, thank you. The Burrow MVP stuff, this was like a backbreaker. If for that to get live again, he's got to beat the Ravens on Thursday night. So, yeah, we'll see.
He can do that. It's not over.
No, it's definitely not over. Definitely not over. Cleveland gets an impressive comeback win, like we just talked about, over the Ravens. They fell behind 17-3 in the first quarter. In the end, they at defense ends up holding Lamar Jackson just 13 completions. This Deshaun Watson injury is something to watch. Looks like he's headed for an MRI on his left ankle. We shall see on Deshaun Watson's status. Evan, what do you think of Brown's impressive comeback win over what many people were calling the best team in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, it was a massive win for the Browns. I mean, a massive comeback. They were getting steamrolled in the first half. It looked like they didn't belong on the same field as the Ravens. And Deshaun Watson goes out with and Deshaun Watson looked terrible. poor footwork, poor mechanics throughout the first two quarters. He goes out at the end of the second quarter with an ankle injury. People were speculating on Twitter that he had a high ankle sprain, which would have been an absolute disaster. But no, he comes out. I'm guessing that he took some of that trusty Teradol or Toradol or whatever they call it, and he goes 14 of 14 in the second half, and the Browns execute a monster comeback win that was huge for their season. I mean, Deshaun Watson has been playing decent football lately, and they've been getting the ball to David Njoku. David Njoku averaging 8 targets over their last 4 games. Amari Cooper, 90-plus yards and or touchdown in 6 of his last 8 games with the Browns.
It gets pretty soft here for the Browns. They play Steelers at home, Broncos, Rams, Jaguars, Bears, Texans, Jets over their next set of games. So, yeah, things are looking up for the Browns right now, assuming Deshaun Watson is indeed healthy on that ankle.
And Kareem Hunt has been like an annoying goal line vulture, but Jerome Ford well ahead of him for the second straight week.
Broncos last night. What a win for the Broncos, man. And since they got embarrassed, remember that Dolphins game, they lost 70-20. Credit to them. Since then, they've won 4 of 6. And I actually think been pretty competent in this game against the Bills. Russ Wilson completes 24 of 29 passes. Most of them were short, but he didn't turn it over. And then you also get Javonte Williams with 25 opportunities. I mean, this is kind of, I think, what Broncos people thought they were getting from Russ Wilson. Still not very impressed, though, with their offense as a whole. Evan, what do you think of Broncos last night up there in Buffalo?
Yeah, we just talked about how Lamar Jackson has been on the negative end of touchdown variance. Russell Wilson has been at the complete opposite, the positive end of touchdown variance, because, they're really using him as – Sean Payton is really using Russell Wilson as a game manager. But he's up to 18 touchdown passes. He had a game before their bye where he threw for like 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, a lot of times it's just the answer is just bad or good variance, and Russell Wilson is getting that good variance right now. Over the Broncos' first 5 games, they allowed 33.3 points per game. Over their last 3, where they're 3-0, they're allowing 13.7 points per game. Over their first 5 games, they were -5 in the turnover differential. Over their last 3 games, they're +8 in turnover differential. And a lot of that is variance too. So it's been a roller coaster for the Broncos this year.
Courtland Sutton continues to outplay Jerry Jeudy. This game, Sutton 11 targets, Jerry Jeudy 3. I also wanted to note Marvin Mims, like Sean Payton finally did it. He gave Marvin Mims 28 routes. Marvin Mims airballed. Got just 1 target. Texans, I mean, CJ Stroud just doesn't stop. CJ Stroud goes into Cincy without Nico Collins and shreds again. Now the Texans are 5-4. CJ Stroud is now like -2,000 or something insane to be the offensive rookie of the year. So many more amazing throws. A lot of them this game to Noah Brown, who like I considered a blocker for a long time. Now Noah Brown goes 7-172-0 on 8 targets. Tank Dell 656-1 on 14 targets. CJ Stroud has guys playing out of their mind. Evan, what do you think of CJ Stroud and the Texans' latest victory this time at Cincy?
Teammate elevator, already an elite quarterback in the NFL. I mean, I don't think that's too much to say. You in a year where there is no clear MVP winner, CJ Stroud is like starting to generate legit like MVP buzz. And this is a team that right now, if the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs over Cincinnati and Buffalo. And they also have a really soft schedule the rest of the way. I think that Devin Singletary really bounced back from a rough first game and a really bad matchup against Tampa Bay to have a big time game here. They really believe that Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce is hurt right now, but they really believe that he's such a better fit for their outside zone running game. And I saw Lance Zierlein commenting about that on Twitter as well this week. Lance Zierlein has covered the Texans for a long time.
Let's go to the Colts. So Colts squeeze out a 10-6 win over the Patriots up there in Foxborough. You know, when you play the Patriots, you can win games only scoring 10 points. The big fantasy story to me was Jonathan Taylor going full alpha with his role over Zach Moss. And we knew this was going to happen. I mean, you can't give Jonathan Taylor $26.5 million guaranteed and then put him in a timeshare. You just can't. Even if Zach Moss is balling, which he was, you know, so in this game, I mean, look at this Jonathan Taylor usage. 50 snaps for JT, 9 for Moss, 22 routes for JT, 2 for Moss, 24 opportunities for JT, 1 for Moss. Given the way Gardner Minshew is checking down and given how fast this team plays, we talked about it last week, but I mean, JT is set up so well. Evan, what'd you think of Colts win in Foxborough?
Yeah, that's the big note that I had. But the other note that I had was, you know, we're doing the Sunday morning show during these games, these overseas games. Josh Downs only played 14 snaps.
Yeah, aggravated the knee.
Oh, he aggravated the knee.
Yeah.
Okay, well, at least he's got the bye upcoming to overcome that, hopefully, because Josh Downs is like a legit baller. Awesome draft pick by Chris Ballard.
Yeah, for sure. I was surprised they put him out there for this game, you know, and they did. He made the trip and he tried to play, but couldn't make it. Jaguars laid a massive egg at home to the 49ers. They were just never in it, you know, and you start getting a lot of questions after the game. Do you guys need to be using Calvin Ridley more? And, you know, on the Coach Speak Index, they had the clip, which I watched, and Doug Peterson was basically saying, listen, Calvin Ridley has drawn 9 penalties, which have gone for over 100 yards this season, which is true. He's drawn a lot of penalties. He's also dropped some big plays, which Doug Peterson didn't mention. The bigger issue to me, though, is that Calvin Ridley is not getting open. You know, he's just not getting open at the same rate that he used to. And so this is what you get when you're on the boundary and you're not getting open. 11 Christian Kirk targets, 3 Calvin Ridley targets. So, yeah, you know, I think there's at least some legit concern here. Obviously, we're pretty deep into the season on Calvin Ridley. But anyways, Evan, what do you think of Jaguars getting smoked by the Niners?
Well, the Jaguars' offensive line isn't that good. And that was exposed severely by San Francisco. Nick Bosa on the outside, now bookended by Chase Young and Randy Gregory, who they got off the scrap heap after Denver cut him. And then on the inside, they've got Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw. I mean, they are freaking loaded up front. And it was too much for Jacksonville to handle. Tank Bigsby is having like the worst. I saw Sam Sherman call him like the worst running back in the league. I mean, I wouldn't dispute that.
He's been the worst running back in the league.
I mean, he's lost fumbles. Yeah. He dropped a pass in this game that led to a third quarter interception. Zay Jones was arrested for domestic battery.
Yeah, misdemeanor domestic battery.
Domestic battery. So we'll see about his status. Obviously, he's been out with a knee injury anyway.
Yeah, Bigsby's got passed by Dearness Johnson in this game. And if I was coaching the Jaguars, I'd probably make that sticky. I mean, Bigsby's just been a team killer. Jaguars do play the Bucs in week 16 and the Panthers in week 17. 2 pretty good matchups for the pass game here. So, you know, if people are giving away pass game pieces or selling pass game pieces, it's at least interesting to note Jaguars fantasy playoff schedule. Chiefs will come out of their bye to play the Eagles on Monday Night Football in a potential Super Bowl preview. I didn't have any real news here, Evan, other than Travis Kelce making the trip to Argentina. If you see the video of Taylor Swift finishing her show in front of tens of thousands of people in Argentina, she cannot wait to get off the stage, sprint, and leap into the arms in Argentina of Travis Kelce, and they engage in a kiss. This looks real to me, Evan.
Interesting, because I think it looks phony. I mean, she's singing you belong with me, and she added in lyrics about Travis Kelce. I mean, I'm just, please, somebody break them up, you know. Did someone cheat on somebody or something? Like, I can't do this anymore.
Oh my gosh. Long trip, man, on the bye week. Listen, long NFL season. If it was my bye week, I wouldn't be going down to Argentina. But when you're in love, you know, the first 6 months of a relationship, it's been a long time, but I remember you go to Argentina on your bye week. That's just what you do. So, Chargers. Wild shootout for the Chargers with the Lions at home. They lose it 41-38, despite Justin Herbert going off for 323 yards and 4 touchdowns, despite Keenan Allen, the ageless one, going off again. This team, it's always the same story. They can't win close games and they can't stay healthy. And that's just been the same story this year. It's like amazing. Every year it's the same thing. They lose so many one-score games in the fourth quarter and they're always hurt. So down bad again are the Chargers. Evan, what do you think of them?
Yeah, I mean, Justin Herbert balled out in this game. I mean, and we talked about this game on Sunday morning as being potentially like a big, high-scoring affair that people weren't necessarily really on. And that was, that was useful analysis if you paid attention to that.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen came out of this game with a shoulder injury. I don't know. Are you concerned about that at all? And Gerald Everett with a back.
Yeah, Gerald Everett, they already said, is just day-to-day. Sounds like he's going to be okay.
Okay.
Keenan Allen was able to come back into the game, so I feel like he's going to be okay, but it did not look good when it happened, that's for sure, on Keenan Allen. So we'll certainly...
Yeah, did you see the picture of him?
Yeah.
And this injury was to his left shoulder, but if you look at his right shoulder, there's like a freaking cone on there. I mean, he some shoulder injury that he had like in 2013 and never had surgery or something.
Yeah, it's so weird. It looks like a bump coming out of his shoulder. Austin Eckler did not convert his goal line chances in this game at a high enough rate, but he gets them, man. And like Austin Eckler is such a valuable asset, especially with Josh Palmer out right now. Quentin Johnson did get a touchdown in this game. He did not look good once again, but he's playing so much, and Justin Herbert is very good. And so he's going to fall into some lines like this with Quentin Johnston, but still think he's just not ready to completely win at the NFL level. Raiders. So Raiders, again, win in the Antonio Pierce era. They've beaten the Giants and the Jets. This time they beat Zach Wilson. By the way, you beat Zach Wilson. You just play defense and you run the ball. Josh Jacobs goes over 100 yards like Antonio Pierce alluded to. Evan's boy, Michael Mayer, had an awesome touchdown catch there in the fourth quarter. Evan, what do you think of Raiders' win over the Jets?
I thought that betting on the Raiders before the game was a pretty good idea because the Jets were favored against the Raiders. I don't know if I put that anywhere, but I should have. Well, I had the Raiders winning in my score prediction on the matchup, so I'll go with that. I don't have any great notes here on the Raiders. I mean, nothing super notable.
It's just such a good Jacobs role, man. And Antonio Pierce actually thinks that Josh Jacobs going over 100 yards means they'll win the game. And yeah, maybe he's not wrong. I mean, Josh Jacobs has been awesome. Dolphins will come out of their bye to face those Raiders. A lot of good vibes around the Dolphins right now. The Devon Achane thing, I think he's going to come back at 100% here. They already said he's going to be back this week. I think the only reason he went on IR was just to kind of protect him from himself. They said maybe he could have played with a brace while he was on IR. So when they say that, it makes me think that he'll be pretty close to 100% as he returns here. Also, Jalen Waddle was banged up before the bye. He says he's back to 100% now. So exciting times for the Dolphins, who I expect to be one of the most explosive offenses in the league, facing the Raiders this week. Evan, anything for you on Dolphins?
Yeah, they should absolutely pull up on the Raiders. Again, coming off a bye, I don't have anything to add. Achane back. I don't know. They should be ready to hum. Mike McDaniel did make it clear before the bye that the one thing that he wanted to get accomplished during the bye was Jalen Waddle coming back at 100%. Hopefully that will happen.
Yeah. I just want to keep noting for people, I know we've talked about this plenty, but the Dolphins fantasy playoff schedule is so brutal. Jets in week 15, Cowboys in week 16, Ravens in week 17. And not that Tyreek Hill and Achane and Mostert and Waddle can't win against those defenses. They certainly can. They're just less likely to do so. So I'm not saying you should trade those guys away ahead of the fantasy playoffs or anything like that, but I do think expectations should be lowered. And if someone in your league doesn't realize that's the playoff schedule, then maybe it's at least worth considering. Patriots. Embarrassing home loss for the Patriots to the Colts. They muster just 2 field goals the entire game. Mac Jones gets benched. They're not naming a starter going forward. Bill Belichick is at rock bottom. We've talked all year. They just don't have enough talent, including at the quarterback position, Evan, what do you think of the Patriots, and do you think they should bench Mac Jones for Bailey Zappi here? I don't think that's the answer personally. Like, who's Bailey Zappi? But I would love to see someone else get a chance. So I don't know. Go ahead, Evan.
People in New England are clamoring for Will Greer.
Okay, fine. Someone.
Yeah. I don't know, Bill O'Brien and Mac Jones barking at each other on the sideline. You know, there's nothing positive to say about this team. Ramondre Stevenson is back tightened up. I don't have anything positive to say.
If they went,
Pop Douglas, I don't know.
Yeah, and they're on a bye this week. But if they went to Greer or Zappi, would you consider that an upgrade at all?
No.
I don't think so either.
Nope.
All right, let's go to the Jets. So the only reason, of course, the Jets should lose to the Raiders is because their quarterback is Zach Wilson. Now, Zach Wilson in this game did make some nice runs, I thought, some reasonable throws, but just really hard to win with him, as we've been saying. And to make it worse, Robert Saleh keeps going up every Monday, every time in front of the media, and he keeps saying, oh, Zach played well. We're sticking with Zach, you know. Meanwhile, we're not idiots. We saw the Vikings get Josh Dobbs for a round 6 pick. We saw the Rams pick up Carson Wentz off the street, and I hate Carson Wentz. I think Carson Wentz sucks. I'd still rather see him quarterback the Jets than Zach Wilson at this point. So what happens with this is, like, yeah, you can get decent Garrett Wilson games because he's so good, but you don't get big games because he can't score touchdowns. Zach Wilson can't get this team in a position to score touchdowns. And with Brees, you know, Brees's workloads are awesome now. He just has to do it all on his own. I mean, for him to go over 100 yards, he has to do some insane things, evading tackles, etc. So it's tough right now. Evan, what do you think of Jets loss to the Raiders?
Yeah, speaking of inability to score touchdowns, the Jets have gone 36 straight drives without a touchdown, and they've scored 144 points on the year. Greg Zuerlein has accounted for 72 of those 144. That's 50% right on the button. So
yeah,
I mean, it's really, really tough sledding for Breece Hall, not just because of Zach Wilson, but also because they've lost so many parts on the offensive line. So you're kind of hoping and praying with Breece Hall.
Allow me to get a bad beat off my chest. I hope you guys know I never talk about bad beats. We had Breece Hall over 15.5 carries. Early in the third quarter, he had 13 carries, and the Jets had a 3-point lead. From there, the Jets proceeded to call 27 consecutive pass plays. 27 consecutive pass plays. I mean, what are they doing? Just absolutely egregious. Steelers. I mean, Steelers are now 6-3. Win again over the Packers. I don't even know how they're 6-3. Kenny Pickett is so bad, was so bad again. Matt Canada was so bad. Key to this game, though, was Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris combining for 183 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on 31 carries. You know, it was announced before the game, and apparently Mike Tomlin told Jaylen Warren the night before that Jaylen Warren was going to be the starter. That doesn't affect anything in projections or how the game plays out, because Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris have been pretty even all year anyways, but it's at least notable that Tomlin and the Steelers wanted to give that recognition to Jaylen Warren. I thought, Evan, what do you think of Steelers win over the Packers?
Yeah, I mean, that was the big takeaway, was that they started Jaylen Warren, and Mike Tomlin, whatever, informed him before the game. George Pickens was not announced with the starters, but did remain a full-time player. That's what I got on the Steelers, who continue to rack up. You know, they are 6-0. Well, all 6 of their 6-3. All 6 of their wins have come by 1 score.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I took Mike Tomlin to win Coach of the Year last week, hoping that they would pull this one out, and they did. So I'm feeling all right about that.
Yeah. I think it can be bad for a team when your quarterback and your offensive coordinator are clearly bad, but you win games, you know, because it's going to be harder for them to move on from Canada. It's going to be harder for them to move on from Pickett now because they're 6-3. So I think for them to actually ever win anything, they need to move on from those guys, but hard to do it when you're 6-3. Last thing we're going to do here today is the Tennessee Titans. Will Levis's 3rd NFL start is by far his worst NFL start. This was against a Bucs defense that has been getting shredded by the pass. They hold Will Levis to 19 of 39 for 167, no touchdowns and interception, just 6 points. Titans are now 0-5 on the road this season. Evan, what do you think of Will Levis and the Titans here against the Bucs?
Very disappointing, because I thought that Will Levis had a chance to have a pretty big game against a Bucs pass defense that had been getting shredded, but the Titans just could not protect Will Levis. You see how many hits they got him. Oh my God, 13 hits on Will Levis. Couldn't move the ball.
Yeah.
Only 4 sacks, which is like a minor miracle, but 13 hits like that, they don't have any protection. And they just lost Nicholas Petit-Frere, who had been rotating between right tackle and left tackle, but he was like a starter for them.
Oh, God. Yeah, not good. And I actually thought DeAndre Hopkins was a pretty good play here. I expected a pass-ish heavy game plan for the Titans, and DeAndre Hopkins just could not get anything going whatsoever with Will Levis. All right, that is going to do it for the Week 10 recap, Week 11 preview here on the Team by Team show at Establish the Run. Do us a big favor. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening on iTunes, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It is indeed free. We appreciate you all out there. For Evan, for producer Luke, for producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.